Thank you for joining us with Frankly Speaking the News. Welcome, everybody, to Frankly Speaking the News. My name is Frank Masdeu. I'm your host for this particular series. We're going to do a deep dive into the events that occurred in Pennsylvania regarding the assassination attempt of President Donald J. Trump. So as we begin that, I want you to see we put together a compilation and a timeline of events that took place leading up to the shooting and at the shooting and thereafter. There are basically three different questions that we want to look at. Number one, was this a lone shooter? If so, how did he get through the layers of security that are supposed to be there at this event to secure a former president and a current nominee for the presidency of the United States? That's a big one. Number two, if it wasn't a lone shooter and it was multiple shooters, what type of conspiracy are we looking at? Number three, was the government involved in any way, shape, or form? And number four, what led up to these events? The vitriol in the media, the hatred towards this particular candidate, what led to all of this? We're going to hopefully try to, in a timeline, in a chronological order as best we can, outline for you a list of events that may have contributed to the conditions that led to this particular assassination attempt. So as we go, we're going to go through these using a mind map. At certain points, we'll stop the video for a few seconds just to give a little bit of a narrative and a little bit of commentary. This is for you to draw your own conclusions and hopefully to come away with a few more answers than you had when you got in and to these questions, and to try and clarify what questions you may have had, probably create a few more. And I do want to mention that in this particular situation, unlike the Kennedy assassination, where you didn't have the advantage of basically hundreds of people with cell phones in their hands being able to, video the events from different angles and different perspectives, we are more than likely going to be able to get a pretty good conclusion as to what may have happened during these events and who may or may not be involved. So bear in mind, you're going to look at different angles. We're not drawing any conclusions by any means. What we are trying to do is basically, like Occam's razor, find whatever the simplest solution is that may be very well the answer. And then if it's layered and nuance, we need to take a look at that. So with that being said, buckle up, because we're going to share this with you. And I want to get your thoughts on this down in the comment section. I'd like you to comment on four basic questions. Number one, do you honestly believe that this was a lone shooter? Number two, if so, why? Third question, do you believe there were multiple shooters? If so, why? And the fourth question is, was there a conspiracy? Was there government assistance, whether it be local, municipal, or federal, or state at that point? So we're going to bring this to you now, and I'd like you to take a look at it. Now, as you can see, the map is kind of convoluted. There's red lines streaming all through here. It's sequential. This is how I was putting it together. We're going to start with number one, Brandon, who's a young prophet who had a vision about the assassination attempt. And the vision was eerily detailed, precise, with a few small caveats. One of which is that he made a claim that in this vision, the president was shot in the ear and his eardrum broke. That didn't, in fact, happen, but he did get shot in the right ear, which is what he claims. I want you to hear this and get your thoughts in the comment section from it. Here we go.
America, because the Lord told me, he said, I am not done with America. He said, there's going to be a new wave of patriotism coming out. And that's whenever I saw Trump, and I saw a red wave coming out of Michigan. And then I saw Oklahoma, and there was embers of people, and they were all on they had torches all throughout Oklahoma, and they were raising up these torches that looked like fire. And they were bringing forth a new patriotism upon the nation. And it was being birthed, and it just kept spreading like fire all throughout America, all throughout. And I saw Trump rising up, And then I saw an attempt on his life. This bullet flew by his ear and it came so close to his head that it busted his eardrum. And I saw he was
Okay, this is at the point where many of his critics complain that it invalidates his prophecy because he said that the eardrum was broken. In his clarification, he did say that because he saw a lot of blood coming down, he assumed that the eardrum was broken. But let's continue. I just want to leave that for you as a caveat.
He fell to his knees during this time frame and he started worshiping the Lord. He got radically born again during this time frame. I'm talking, people say he's saved now, but he becomes really on fire for Jesus for what I saw coming. And then I saw people interceding when I saw him winning the presidency through great, the Lord showed me it would go clear into the summer, great persecution would come on him through the judges and through the law and all these people trying to sue him and all this stuff, but there would be a stop to it, and there things would start to break free come toward the fall. And then I saw him winning the election through the Patriots coming out and voting, and then there will be a great economy crash. I saw they had a great economy plan, a crash worse than the Great Depression, and the Lord warned me about this. It would be a great dark time. But I saw paddles coming upon America's soil like a shocking of the soil. And I saw Donald Trump.
So in this particular prophecy, he's claiming that Donald Trump will win the election and will suffer a major catastrophic event to the economy the following year.
Praying in the office of the Oval Office. And
which will lead to some revival.
He was weeping before the Lord with his hands on his head like this, but he was weeping. And there was ministers and people. I don't know if they were senators or Congress people or whatever. I just saw them pacing and back and forth inside of the White House. I'm sorry, what is the White House, but it's the Oval Office. Yeah. And they were interceding all inside there, and I could feel.
Now, bear in mind, this occurred around April 8th. So this was many, many months before the event. So bear that in mind as you're listening to his commentary here.
The presence of the Lord so strong on this. And then I could see that darkness that was the heaviness upon America with the financial crisis of what I saw coming. It started to lift above the trees, and I saw the blue and the things coming back out, and the green times and the good times coming back again. But the Lord said it would be forth a time of a season of a shaking, and it would be a shaking to awaken. And in this, this would basically that he was not done with America. There would be a great revival come, and it's not all doom and gloom. That's what he said.
Well, praise God. There's going to be an awakening and a shaking, and that the financial repression that will hit the United States will be lifted according to his prophecies. So I just wanted to give you some insight into this prophetic vision that he had 4 months prior to the event that took place. So that was Brandon's call. Now, the next one that we're going to share with you is from the Tucker Carlson show. And it's basically some thoughts that he had regarding the situation with Donald J. Trump, our former president, the media, and the pressure that had been mounting on him from the moment that he came down the stairs at Trump Towers to announce that he was a candidate for the presidency of the United States, and what had transpired since. Again, these are all leading up to the events that we witnessed at the assassination attempt. This is to give you background information to try and hopefully get the chronological timelines in shape so that you can see, and that will hopefully clarify in your mind the possibilities of what may be going on or what we may be witnessing.
The attempt on Trump had succeeded, that Biden would have stayed in. People can draw their own conclusions from that, but I believe that. It seems obvious to me that all of these things are connected. But he did drop out yesterday. Apparently,
someone dropped out, Tucker.
But that's the Soviet Union. I mean, this is a free and transparent country owned by its own citizens.
Ever on here? I mean,
so you sort
Tucker,
of,
that's a crazy other thing.
But what's so bewildering to me is that nobody mentions it. I mean,
Go look at the media right now. If Wired.com, it's a conspiracy theory to say that this was a coup. There's this whole hagiography that's going on right now of, oh, it was this tense decision that Biden was grappling with.
But we don't know any of that.
Oh, of course we do. We've been informed by people close to his thinking that that this is exactly how it went down. And of course, none of us were in the room. None of us got to see any of this, but we're all told, no, this is exactly what happened.
Now they're discussing the sudden decision by Joe Biden to not run for re-election and basically bless Kamala Harris as the candidate to be. This happened obviously after the assassination attempt. So I just wanted to give you some context on this, which is really interesting because you have to have several questions in mind. Number one, who is actually running the White House? If you honestly believe that Joe Biden is running the government, all the apparatuses of the government, all the institutions, then there's not much more I can say for you. I think it's become very apparent that he's basically a stand-in and that he was basically pushed out because of his polls and because of a failed assassination attempt on Donald J. Trump and the fact that Trump's numbers would probably surge even more and the gap was widening. So let me continue to play this real quick.
Joe Biden isn't out there himself telling us that any of it's happened. And as of the time of recording, we haven't even heard from Kamala Harris yet, who we're told there isn't anything physically wrong with her. So why isn't Kamala coming out or Jill coming out or anyone coming out and just talking to the American people and at least giving us some semblance of a story as to what's going on?
As someone who's thought for the last few years that this was not a democracy, it's an oligarchy, the real business conducted in the shadows, shielded from public scrutiny by lies and classification laws. I've thought all that for a while because it's clearly true. But to see that all revealed, they just took the mask off.
So what
is shocking.
What you're seeing is a layer being pulled back, and the core is never revealed. So in the intelligence community, you would say, all right, if your cover is blown, or you've got an issue with your cover, you've got an issue with our identity, whatever it is, someone's asking questions about the operation. You never come out and say, well, you got me, I'm CIA. Yep. Langley sent me. No. What you would do is that you would peel back a layer and say, okay, I may have lied about this thing, but here's what's really going on. But you never get to the full truth. So think of it as layers of an onion, for example. So you never get to the core. Just one peel comes off, and now we're going to go with that. So the peel that's coming off right now is, yes, Leviathan does have to show itself in order for this move to take place. And that's what's happening. So this idea that you live in, that they promote a lot more than Republicans promote, by the way, that we live in a democracy and the people are the ultimate arbiters of sovereignty and justice in America. And we're fighting to protect our democracy. By the way, we're protecting our democracy from Donald Trump, who's the biggest threat to democracy. But this guy, well, we don't like him anymore, so we're just going to remove him. And we're going to pull his money and we're going to pull his delegates. And then actually, to me, the most interesting thing that I see is when you watch all these delegates, all these delegations are coming out now. North Carolina has decided they're behind Kamala Harris, and New York says they're behind Kamala Harris, and each delegation starts going. This is like watching the election results in North Korea, because what do you mean the delegates are suddenly for Kamala Harris? The delegates were voted for by the people of the Democrat Party. Like 14 million people or something voted in this election, and suddenly their votes don't matter anymore.
It's very interesting. What they're really discussing is the fact that normally you'd go to the convention, you'd have an open convention, the delegates would vote for their candidate. Since Biden had decided not to run for re-election, those delegates are free to go ahead and cut deals with other candidates and basically pledge their delegates, their delegation to any candidate that they choose. And this is typically done at the convention. And what we saw happen was quite the opposite. What we saw happen was that all the delegates were appointed to Kamala Harris, and she was appointed as the presidential nominee and appointed as the nominee for president of the United States on behalf of the Democratic Committee, and that there was no vote. So those 13 or 14 million votes that happened in the primaries were basically nullified, because now that Biden had decided not to rerun, they were basically appointed and Kamala was anointed. So I just wanted to give you some information as to what transpired. Now, bear in mind, this assassination attempt happened on a Saturday. The Republican National Convention was due to begin on a Monday. At the point of the assassination, the vice presidential nominee had not been chosen by Donald J. Trump. So had there been a successful assassination, you had two candidates that were waiting in the wings, Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo. There was some chatter that Mike Pompeo had spoken to some of the delegates from Tennessee and a variety of other states that he was going to be the vice presidential nominee and that Nikki Haley was going to be the presidential nominee. This was a few days before the actual attempt on the president's life. So if they had been successful in taking out Donald J. Trump, and again, if you believe that there's a big state, deep state, they would have been able to get both of their nominees on the ticket. So whoever won would have been a part of this massive institutional collusion. Basically, these oligarchs who were in power on a global scale. So they would have controlled the candidates, therefore controlled the presidency, regardless of the outcome. So I just wanted to share that with you so that you'd have something to think about as we go forward to the next clip. This clip is the actual clip where he talks about what do you do with somebody you've tried to take out that hasn't been, that you haven't been successful in taking out. Here we go.
He won anyway. They impeached him twice on ridiculous pretenses.
So Tucker's outlining the case that could be made for the attempted assassination of a former president, respectfully, Donald J. Trump, and what has transpired over the last 8 years. So let's hear what he's got to say.
It fabricated a lot about what happened on January 6th in order to impeach him again. It didn't work. He came back, then they indicted him. It didn't work. He became more popular. Then they indicted him 3 more times, and every single time his popularity rose. So if you begin with criticism, then you go to protest, then you go to impeachment, now you go to indictment, and none of them work. What's next? I mean, graph it out, man. We're speeding toward a...
And that's exactly what we're doing here. We're graphing it out. Okay. To borrow from Tucker, we're graphing it out.
Assassination, obviously. And no one will say that, but I don't know how you can reach that conclusion. You know what I mean? Like, they have decided, permanent Washington, both parties have decided that there's something about Trump that's so threatening to them, they just can't have it. They call.
Now, this is a great point by Tucker. And it's confusing, confounding, and terrifying, all in the same vein. Confusing in that these presidents have a moratorium on the length of their term. They can only have 8 years in service and then they're out. So these institutions and these senior executive service people who run these institutions at the institutional level, who basically live in DC and basically run the country out of these institutions, they see presidents come and go. They basically ignore many of the executive orders that are given to them, and they run the country. Okay. So if you get a president that you're not ideologically aligned with, give it 4 years, he's out. Maybe 8, he's out, and you go back to what you're doing. To Tucker's point, never have we seen a reaction from these institutions, or let's call it the deep state, like we've seen with Donald Trump. And the question you have to ask yourself is, obviously they're being poked. And if you look at the deep state as a beast, as an animal, a dragon, or whatever it is, a sleeping animal, and all of a sudden it's starting to overreact to what should be a relatively innocuous presidential candidate who doesn't wield a tremendous amount of power coming in to run the country. What is it about him that frightens them to the point that they would begin to circumvent and break the law blatantly at the institutional level with the intelligence agencies, the Justice Department, the courts, all colluding together out in the open, exposing themselves. You can no longer call the deep state a conspiracy theory. It is a reality. It is a conspiracy. Why? Well, it's real clear. They've all come out in the open. You're prosecuting a former president for paying off a supposed relationship with a stripper and categorizing it as a business expense, and then somehow tying it to his campaign. And this is what you're doing in New York City, and this is what you're basically indicting him on and convicting him of. If you look at all the charges, they're they're ridiculous on their face, and they're also ignoring the Supreme Court, who says that the presidential carries immunity for presidential actions. They're continuing to this day. They've seated another grand jury after the Supreme Court gave their decision on presidential immunity, and basically are thumbing their nose at the Supreme Court and saying, we're going to indict again. So you got to ask yourself, what is it that if this president got into power again would be exposed that would threaten them on such a level and create so much fear? What is that? And so that's the question that I leave you. By the way, please put it in the comment section. Let me know what your thoughts are. It's a thought-provoking question. It makes absolutely no sense, because if you look at it, the president's first term was mired in double impeachments, accusations, false Russian accusations. He was a Russian agent, the Steele dossier. He was involved with the bank in Russia. He was getting paid by the Russians. All these accusations were false on their face. Not only that, we later discovered that they were paid for by the Hillary campaign, the DNC. It was whitewashed by the FBI. They knew the truth. They hid it. Fake FISA warrants were issued based on faulty information and outright lies by people that were in the Justice Department, that were attorneys. And nobody paid a price for any of this once it was exposed. The Mueller investigation, everything, the Durham investigation, everything that came out, we now know that out of the 25 conspiracies that were floated out there, conspiracy theories, all 25 proved to be factual. So the question is, okay, the intelligence agency, 52 or 53 intelligence agents from the intelligence agencies came out and said that this was all a Russian disinformation campaign when it related to the Hunter Biden laptop, which proved to have tremendous amounts of incriminating evidence, including espionage, basically stealing, the theft of military secrets, selling out the country, profiting from positions, all kinds of criminal activity. No indictments, nothing happens, everything's whitewashed. So the DOJ, so right now what they're telling you is, we don't care that you know that there's duplicity in the legal system and it's laws for thee but not for me. We really don't care. We have weaponized it. We're targeting you as conservatives, or half the country, whatever it is. And to hell with it. We're taking off the mask. We're not even arguing with it. The media is an active, complicit, compliant associate involved in all of these activities, and that's come to be true as well. So and January 6th, the way that was blown apart, the pipe bomb, who placed it there, that they can't find out. We now know that it's very possible that the Capitol Police, in conjunction with the FBI, actually placed this dummy pipe bomb at the DNC and at the RNC. So there's so many questions. The one thing that's pretty clear is that this is not the activity or the actions of a normal government. So the question is, what is beneath all of this that's causing this type of vitriol, this type of hatred, and these types of reactions? Because if it would have to be massive on a global scale, because that's the only thing that would make any sense. Now, also bear in mind, way out here in the background, a lot of this, not that it's tied or related to, but it could be, the Epstein situation. Epstein, and all of this child exploitation, human trafficking, the island in the Caribbean, the Lolita Express, the aircraft, everything that was going on, all those ties. For the first time in history, you have someone indicted, arrested, and convicted, or arrested, indicted, and convicted for the crimes of child trafficking, but there's no to who. Who did she child traffic to? So Ghislaine Maxwell. So very interesting things. Anyway, I'm sorry I went off on a tangent, but it seems like all these roads lead in the same direction. So we'll continue on here. Now, there's been a lot made in the media of the Republicans, the conservatives, the alt-right, you name it, calls for violence, that Trump may have brought this upon himself, that he's a homophobe, transphobe, anyway, whatever phobe you want, he's basically got all of it. So basically they're attacking him personally, not all his policies, and it's all fabrications, but nonetheless it's parroted in an echo chamber in the media. So let's hear what the media has said over the last couple of years that may have led up to the conditions where you could recruit a young mind to commit such a heinous act. Let's listen here. So these are the media calls for violence. Here we go.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country. Maybe there will be. People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
There needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
They go low, we can.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
Biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized right up to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He on the escalator. And
So just a quick mention. If you listen to Don Lemon or Lemon or whatever he calls himself, the biggest threat to America are white men, mostly radicalized to the right. So white men are the biggest terrorist threat to this country. Think about that for a minute. This is coming from CNN. Think about that. I'd like your comments on that, because when it comes to identity politics and attacks, there's the viciousness with which the media does it and the lack of accountability is astounding. Play the rest for you.
oh, Mexicans, rapists, and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said, if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him. Punch some people in the face.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still gonna have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Okay, so he's talking about putting a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact. There's even a play that was done that was widely attended in New York City by the elite classes, basically replicating the assassination of Donald J. Trump. And here we have Snoop Dogg doing the same thing. Here we go.
Look, his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
So as you look at this, you got to think to yourself, these people all have something in common. Donald Trump is such a threat to whatever it is that they're beholden to. You got to figure out what that is, that they would come out in public and basically threaten his life with impunity without fear of any kind of judicial retribution, none whatsoever. Now you have hate speech, you have people being arrested for posts. These people have no fear of any of that, because none of them will ever be arrested for hate speech violations or for any. So it's really curious. Just think about that. Again, share your thoughts.
And I thought
and all the lies about blowing up the White House.
A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you get in a car. And you push back on them.
Isn't she inciting people to attack people in a restaurant and in any public location? Isn't that inciting a crowd? Now, what about Maxine Waters? Well, is she in fear of being prosecuted for her comments? No.
And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. They're not going to stop.
So Donald Trump and the Republicans are a danger to democracy and a danger to the Constitution. Remember now, the Constitution, the very document that these people despise and ignore for the majority of the time, that he is a danger. How so? By taking us out of global wars? By putting America first? I don't understand. Please help me clarify that.